Good morning, everyone. Happy Whale Wednesday. Now, it is Whale Wednesday, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today in our Aquarium Online Academy. And I'm so glad you're joining us because we do have a really cool program for you today. We are going to be talking all about invertebrates. Now, you might be wondering, what is an invertebrate? Well, I've got an example of an invertebrate right here. Now, before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and we are so excited to talk about these animals. Now, an invertebrate is actually a really big group of animals. Do you know what an invertebrate is? Have you heard that word before? Now, while we're exploring today, if you want to tell me what an invertebrate is, or you want to answer any other questions or share your observations, we would love to hear from you. Now, we have a way for you to communicate with us. We have this text line. Now, I have Carrie and Ashley helping me out today, and Carrie just put this phone number on the screen. This number is 562-286-1838, and you can use this number to text us in any questions or observations. So right now, while I'm talking, if you want to text us in what an invertebrate is, we would love to hear from you. Now, this text line is to be used if you are watching this program live. So it is 9 a.m. on June. It's June already. On June 1st, you can text us in. If you're watching after the fact, we still want to hear from you, but we ask that you email us, and that email is live@lbaop.org. And that's because we're not always manning that text line, but we still want to be able to communicate and answer your questions if you have any. Well, excellent. Let's dive into what an invertebrate is. Now, we are not invertebrates. We are vertebrates. If you think about if you're sitting right now, or if you're standing, or you're walking, or if you give me a thumbs up, or if you wave at the screen, we can do all those things because we have a bony skeleton, right? We have structure in our body that allows us to move around. And if you reach around and you feel at your back, all those bumps down your spine, those are your vertebrae. That's your spinal cord made up of all these vertebrae stacked together. Now, an invertebrate, when we put that I in before that word, invertebrate means no bones. So unlike us, who have vertebrae, animals like these ones here, they are invertebrates, which means they have no bones. So the animals that we're going to talk about today are all of these animals with no bones. Now, we can start talking about this one on the screen here. Do we recognize this animal? Now, this is one of the webcams here at our aquarium. So we have cameras in a lot of our exhibits. We often talk about our webcams. And this one is in our jelly exhibit. So you're right, these are jellyfish or sea jellies. Now, if you visit us here at the aquarium, you may have touched a moon jellyfish. Now, these are not moon jellies. These are quite a bit bigger, but we do have moon jellies for you to touch. And I know that might sound scary, but some jellyfish, like our moon jellies, are completely safe to touch. But these ones here that we're looking at, which I think are really pretty just to watch them, it's very soothing. These are called Pacific sea nettles. Now, what do you notice about these animals? Now, as an invertebrate, they don't have any bones, so their lives are going to be very different from ours. The way they move, the way they survive in their habitat is going to be really different. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look for their adaptations. Now, that might be a big word. You may be familiar with it. It might be a new word for you. But this word adaptation, we talk about a lot. It's something on an animal's body that helps it survive in its habitat. Now, every animal and plant on the planet has adaptations. They have things on their body that help them survive in their habitat. And you might not think about it, but the more you look at animals and think, how does this animal stay safe? How does this animal find food? How does this animal move around in their habitat? Those are all adaptations. So let's take a moment, watch our jellies, and think about what is special about a jelly that helps it survive in its habitat. Now, while we're thinking of those adaptations, I'm going to share some of the observations that I make when watching jellies. I notice the colors on these jellies. Now, jellies can come in all different kinds of colors. Our moon jellies, if you've seen them, they're pretty much clear, kind of like the moon almost. But these jellies, I notice they've got some yellowish orange on the top part. That's what we call the bell. And then they've got some white, kind of fluffy looking strings in the middle. And then it might be kind of hard to tell the color, but these really skinny strings on the outside, those are actually red. They can be really bright red. Let's look at a picture of a nettle. So it's not moving. We can kind of focus on all the parts of this jelly. Maybe that'll help us tell the adaptations. Excellent. So this one looks a little bit different color, but this is the same type of animal, a Pacific sea nettle. So we've got the top part. This is the bell. And we notice when that jelly was moving, they kind of pulse their bell. That's how they can kind of have a little bit of mobility. And then these are white fluffy things that I was talking about. And then these red strings here. Now I wonder if anyone knows, what are these red stringy things used for? These things have a special ability. Definitely one of those adaptations for our jellies. Does anyone know what they can do with those, we'll call them tentacles here? That's right. They can sting. So jellies, they have a way of, one, protecting themselves, and two, getting their food, and that's by using stingers. So all those long red strings on the kind of around the outside of the bell of the jelly, they have stinging cells in those tentacles. Now, stinging can be used for a lot of different reasons, as I mentioned. They'll use it to protect themselves. So if an animal might try and eat them, they can sting that animal, and that deters the animal from wanting to eat them anymore. And then the second thing they can do with them is they can catch their food. So if a tiny little animal, something that they're going to eat, might swim through them or bump into the jelly, they can use those stinging cells to sting that animal, and then they'll eat it. But how do they eat it? Right? This is a different animal. It doesn't look like it has a mouth the same way that our mouth works, or most animals we think about with the mouth. And that's where these fluffy white things come in. These are called their oral arms. And what that means is these arms are going to help them bring food into their mouth. So an animal might get stung by touching the tentacles, and then they'll bring it to these oral arms, and then the oral arms are going to help the food travel all the way up to the very top, into the bell. And that is where the stomachs of the jelly is. Now I'm going to have Carrie bring up a picture of a moon jelly, because that's going to help us see the stomachs of our jellyfish. They're similar for all different types of jellies, but here in our moon jelly, you can really see their stomachs at the top of the animal. So these little circles right here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 circles at the top of the jelly. Those are their stomachs. You heard that right. Jellies have 4 stomachs. Actually, here at the aquarium, we've seen anywhere from 2, sad day for that jelly, to 8 stomachs. Goodness, 8 stomachs. So some jellies have 8 stomachs. They should have 4, but we've seen anywhere between 2 and 8. Now think about all the food you could eat with 4 stomachs. Now I think about, if I had 4 stomachs, I would have 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, 1 for dinner, and the last one, ice cream, just for ice cream. What about you? What would you fill your 4 stomachs with? Would they all be filled with cookies? We all might have different things we want to fill our stomachs with. But jellies, they're filling their stomachs with tiny little other plankton, little animals that are going to float around the ocean, kind of like floating things you see back here. They're going to float into their tentacles, they're going to get stung, and then they bring it up into their 4 stomachs. Now, if you've been here at the aquarium, when we feed our jellies, you can actually see them change colors. Now, not all jellies can change colors. Most stay one color, but when our moon jellies eat, because their body is kind of clear and their food is pink, their stomachs actually turn pink. So that's another funny thing to think about. What if we change the color of our food when we eat it? So if you ate a strawberry, you turn red. If you ate a carrot, you turn orange. If you ate broccoli, you turn green. Thank goodness we don't change colors when we eat. Here's another good picture to see their stomachs, and you can kind of see how they turn color. So this one up here, we can tell that this jelly has food in its stomach because there's all that pink. And then this jelly looks like maybe it doesn't have food, it hasn't eaten yet. This one not so much. But then this one and this one back here, they look like they have a lot of food in their stomach, because we can see that all those tiny little shrimp is what they're eating have kind of come together into the stomach and turned their body pink. Excellent. So jellies are just one example of an invertebrate that we find in the ocean. So these animals have no bones in their body. So the way they protect themselves is going to be really different, because like us, we can run away. We have hard parts in our body that protect us when we fall. But jellies, they're all soft, so they have stingers to help protect them, and that's their adaptation. Excellent. Let's take a look at another invertebrate. I'm going to let Carrie pick an invertebrate for us to talk about. There are a lot to choose from. Invertebrates are actually the largest group of animals on the planet. We might be able to think of lots and lots of animals with bones, but there's actually more animals without bones than there are animals with bones on the planet, including this one. Have you seen this animal before? Now, if you've come visit us or gone to any other aquarium or even gone to the tide pools right here in Southern California or anywhere else, you may have even touched this animal. Now, you might be thinking, who would want to touch something that looks like this? It's so spiky. But this is actually a really nice animal, and as long as we're gentle, we can touch them. These are sea urchins. Have you heard of a sea urchin before? Now, this is a really interesting invertebrate, because when we think of an invertebrate, I just said it's an animal with no bones. And we looked at a jelly that was pretty much soft and squishy, right? Now, having no bones doesn't mean an animal doesn't have anything hard on their body. It means they don't have a bony skeleton. But our sea urchin does have a lot of hard parts, right? It's got all these spikes covering its body. And then underneath the spikes is a sort of like a shell that protects all its organs on the inside. So it's not a vertebrate because it has no bones, but it still has hard parts on its body. Now, what do you think the adaptations for a sea urchin are? What helps this animal stay safe? Well, one of them, we kind of just said, those hard parts, right? It's got all those spikes. Now, it's not like a porcupine where if you touch it, it's going to kind of spike you with its spikes. Its spines are just for its protection. So if you're looking for a snack in the ocean and you're swimming around and you're looking for something to eat and you see a sea urchin, do you think you want to eat something that looks spiky like this? Probably not. And so the sea urchin stays safe just by looking spiky. I mean, it is spiky, but just by appearance, it deters animals from wanting to eat it because most animals don't want a mouth full of spikes or anything crunchy. They want to try and eat the softer, squishier things. And so the sea urchin's adaptation are having these spines. Now, urchins are interesting animals because they are one of the few invertebrates that have teeth. Is that right? They have teeth. Now, taking a look at the urchin, where do you think the mouth is? Now, remember, you can always text us answers to questions or your own questions or share your observations at 562-286-1838. Where do you think the mouth of our urchin is? Does it look like it has a mouth on top? No, not really. So you're right, the mouth is on the bottom. So right now it's underneath this urchin. And if we were to look at their mouth, they have 5 teeth. Here we go. This is a zoomed in close-up of where their mouth is. So this is the very bottom of the urchin. And inside this hole right here is where their mouth is. And they have 5 teeth. It kind of looks like this, kind of like a claw almost. 5 teeth. We call their teeth an Aristotle's lantern. I don't really know the meaning behind that name, but that's what we call their mouth part is an Aristotle's lantern. And they use those 5 teeth to eat pretty much one thing. Now, they will eat other things if they have to, but pretty much they eat kelp. So for being one of the few invertebrates with teeth, they are a vegetarian. And they mostly just eat kelp. And that's that green stuff that other sea urchin was sitting on. We'll go back to that picture. This right here is kelp. So we find kelp forests right here along our Southern California coast. And the blades or even the holdfast, which is what attaches kelp to a rock, is what our sea urchins are going to munch on with their teeth. Now, you may have been to the beach and you find kelp washed up on the shore. Sometimes it kind of gets tangled in our feet. Next time you go, if you take a look at one of those blades, sometimes you even see their little munch marks. You can see a piece of that kelp kind of cut out, almost like a little wavy line. And that could be from the sea urchin munching away at that kelp. Now, sea urchins, like we said, don't look like a really good snack for animals, but there are a few animals who actually do feed on sea urchins. Now, one of those are sea otters. Now, we don't have sea otters here in Southern California, but in Northern California and all the way up to Alaska, they will find animals like this. Now, we do have them here at the aquarium. We have quite a few otters, and to let you in on, it's not really a secret anymore, but we actually have baby otters here at the aquarium. You heard that right. We have a brand new exhibit open here at the aquarium. It just opened last week, and part of it features our baby otters. So come check it out and see all the cuteness of these furry little animals. Let me get back on point, though. I kind of took a little tangent there, but who doesn't like to talk about babies? So our otters, these furry animals, they love to eat urchins. Now, otters have a whole range of foods that they will eat. There's about 22 different things they will eat, but their favorite tends to be urchins. Now, scientists who have studied sea otters have even seen their teeth and their bones turn purple from eating so many urchins. Now, they're not eating those spikes directly. What otters do is they're actually one of the few animals, besides humans, who are seen using tools when they eat. Now, you might think, what tools do we use when we eat? But your knife and fork and spoon, those are all tools that we use to help us eat. And otters, they're not using those exact tools, but otters are known to take a rock or shell and then take the food they want to eat, like an urchin, and they'll crack the rock or the urchin with the rock and break off most of those spines, break into the inside of that urchin, and eat the animal up. And so otters are one of the animals that eat urchins. And you can kind of see in its mouth right here, they've got pretty big teeth that can help them eat those urchins. And then here in Southern California, we have a fish. That's right, a fish that eats sea urchins. And this fish is called a California sheephead. And we have some here at the aquarium. I think Carrie's looking for a picture. These are really interesting fish. They might be one of my favorite fish in the kelp forest. Here it is. So this is a really interesting fish, but how it's able to eat sea urchins is their jaw is extremely strong. So here they always have this white jaw, you can see right here. And then this bump on this head right here is like an extra tangle of muscles, making their jaw even stronger. And then, we don't have a picture of this, but if you were to look in their mouth, they have these big teeth. They almost look like human teeth, which is kind of weird to think about human teeth on a fish. But that is how they're able to eat the urchin, because unlike the otter, who's going to use a rock to kind of break into the urchin, what sheephead will do is they'll actually use their teeth to pull urchins off of the rocks. They kind of drop it a couple times, break off some of the shells, and then they just bite right into it, pulling away the parts of the shell and eating the animal on the inside. Pretty cool. So urchins, another invertebrate, they do have those spines for protection, but that doesn't mean that other animals won't. And urchins are a really important part of that food web that keeps animals like our California sheephead and our otters alive. Excellent. So we've talked about jellies so far. One invertebrate uses stinging cells to help protect itself and catch its food. And then we talked about sea urchins, who might look like they have bones, but it's just hard structures on their body. But they are an invertebrate, and they have those spines for protection, but they also get eaten by some other animals. Let's see what animal we're going to talk about next. Now remember, if you have an invertebrate in mind that you would like to talk about, you can go ahead and text us at that number you see on your screen. Ah, interesting. So there's actually, I see 2 different invertebrates in here, but we'll start with the one that's kind of stealing the show, this one here in the middle. Do you know what this animal is that's kind of moving in the water current there? That's right. This is a sea anemone. Now, a lot of times you might get, or people get urchins and anemones confused. And that's all right. They are kind of confusing. They live in the same place, but urchins are the spiky ones, and anemones are these kind of drifty ones, kind of breezy ones. They move in the water current. Now, anemones, they have an adaptation that's similar to our jellies, and that's because they're actually relatives. They're in the same family. We call them cnidarians. Now, all cnidarians, jellies, anemones, and corals are part of that family as well. What makes them in the same family is they share a common characteristic. There's something that's the same about all of them. And it happens to be that adaptation that we talked about with the jelly. So think back to about 15 minutes ago. What did we say was the jelly adaptation? How do they stay safe, and how do they catch food? Do you remember? That's right. They can sting. And anemones, believe it or not, they can do the same thing. Now, just like the urchins, which I said are safe to touch, and some jellies here at the aquarium, anemones are safe to touch as well. So if you visit us at our aquarium, or you go to another aquarium, or even see these animals in their natural habitat, tide pool, you can safely touch an anemone, even though I just said it stings. And that's because stings aren't that strong, and we have so many layers of skin that it won't hurt us. But if you've ever touched an anemone before, you know it's kind of sticky. It kind of feels like you're touching tape. If you've got a roll of tape around and you touch it, it's kind of sticky a little bit. And that's what touching an anemone feels like. But if you're a fish, do you think it feels the same? Probably not. It probably hurts a little bit more. And so that's how they're able to not only stay safe, but catch their food. So a fish with a thin layer of scales, or maybe a shrimp, might kind of swim through all their tentacles, thinking maybe this is a flower. Sometimes we'll call them plant-like animals, because they kind of look like plants or flowers. And so a fish might swim through there thinking, oh, I'm just going for a nice little swim. But then these tentacles will fire their stingers and catch that food. And then in the very, very middle is where the mouth is for the anemone. So they'll bring everything in and they'll digest the food. Now, if you're watching closely, you may notice there is a fish down here. We'll see, it comes in just a moment. Keep an eye out for that fish. There it is. A fish right there. Now, that fish is called a painted greenling. And you might be wondering, Sarah, you just said that this anemone uses its tentacles to catch things like fish or shrimp. So how is there a fish in there? Well, the fish is going to be one, avoiding that anemone. But also, this fish, this painted greenling, is very similar to another animal who you might recognize that lives in different types of anemones. So this anemone here is a cold water species. This one is found in our northern Pacific. So it can be from San Francisco area all the way up to Alaska. But anemones can be found in all types of water. So you might be familiar with a clownfish living inside of an anemone in a tropical habitat. Did you think of that when you saw the anemone, right? Clownfish are a pretty recognizable fish, and we often think of them living in anemones. Now, the way that clownfish, here we go. So here's an anemone, these green things with the little purple tips, that's an anemone. And we see this clownfish all up in that anemone space. Now, that clownfish has a special layer of slime. It's a thicker layer of slime than most fish, because all fish do have a layer of slime on their body. But for clownfish, it's a special and thicker layer of slime. And so when they swim through an anemone, they don't feel the sting of it. And that way, the clownfish stays safe inside the anemone. It also helps protect the anemone and kind of keeps it clean. And they work together and they have this what we call symbiotic relationship. So the slime helps protect the clownfish. Now that painted greenling is very similar to the clownfish. It doesn't live inside the anemone, but it does have that thicker layer of slime covering its body, allowing it to live in close proximity to the anemone without getting harmed by its stingers. So it's really cool to think about how animals live in the same habitat and maybe work together. So one animal has an adaptation that's going to help it survive, and then another animal might have another adaptation that helps it survive with that other animal. So the stinging cells help protect the anemone, help them catch its food, and this layer of slime helps protect that fish, allowing it to live near this animal. Excellent. All right, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more animals. So let's see what our next invertebrate is going to be. Aha! Were you all hoping for this one? This is definitely a crowd pleaser. What animal are we looking at here? Did you recognize it? Well, let's make some observations first. And go ahead and text us in with that number down at the bottom of our screen if you know what this animal is. Now, first off, I noticed the color. It's kind of a really pretty reddish color of this animal. And it's got lots of things going on here, right? Lots of things going on all over the place. So this animal, did you guess what it is? You're right. It's an octopus. So this octopus here has lots and lots of arms. Now, octopus, if we recount, they have 8 arms. And that's what their name, octo, part of their name, means 8. So 8 arms. Now, sometimes you might call them tentacles. And that's all right. Sometimes we get them kind of mixed up. But there is actually a difference between arms and tentacles. So when we talk about tentacles, like on a squid has 2 tentacles. Tentacles tend to be longer and used for grabbing a hold of things. And then they will pull them in. But arms, they're used more for moving around. They will hold on to things, but they're not used for grabbing in the same way. So when we think about a squid, they have 10 appendages. They have 10 long wiggly things, but 2 of the really long ones are their tentacles, and the shorter ones are their arms. Octopus have 8 arms. So I notice all their arms, and they're really kind of wiggly and moving in all different directions here in this picture. And then I see these circles covering their arms. Any ideas what those big circles are? They've got lots of them. This is a giant Pacific octopus, and they tend to have the most of those circles of any octopus. They're also the largest of any octopus species. Those are their suction cups. Now, the suction cups help them do quite a bunch of things, but they have about 250 suction cups per arm. So 8 arms, 250 suction cups on each arm, gives them around 2,000 plus suction cups. Now, what are those suction cups used for? Any ideas? Yeah, it helps them to move around, so it helps with movement. Right? Octopus aren't really seen swimming, but they kind of move around using their arms, almost like they're walking with their arms. So they use them for movement. Here's a really good picture. Or video of our giant Pacific octopus moving along the glass of its exhibit. So they can use it to hold on and move around. Look at all those suction cups. I also think it's cool to watch how they move the very ends of their arms. They can pretty much move them in all directions. They can curl them up. They can stretch them out. It's kind of fascinating to watch them move. Now, they can also do a couple other things with those suction cups. They can grab a hold of things, so maybe they're grabbing a hold of their food. And they can use it to smell their food, too. So octopus have to find their food, right? Any animal that's going to eat has to find its food. But they have a nose like we do. So they're actually going to use those suction cups to help them smell for their food. So they have smell sensors. So whenever they're moving around and touching a surface, that helps them sense the things around them. They smell what is around them. And they find their food. Now, speaking of their food and their mouth is here in the very middle. Right there in the middle. I have a plush octopus I'm going to grab. So here's my octopus. And here's its 8 arms. And in the very middle, here is where their mouth would be. Now, their mouth is different from our mouth. And it's like the urchin, the 5 teeth for their mouth. Their mouth is actually like a beak. So right here in the middle, that's where their mouth is. And it actually looks very similar to a bird's beak. And it's really strong. And they use that to kind of pinch or pierce into things like crab shells. So crabs tend to be one of octopus's favorite foods. And crabs have that hard exoskeleton, that exterior to their body that helps protect them. And octopus use that beak to crunch into the shell of that crab. They actually then release a toxin and it helps break down the crab and they're able to eat it. Now, I think Carrie has a video for us. And this video is of our giant Pacific octopus here at the aquarium. And we like to give our octopus enrichment. What that means is when we give them their food, we don't just hand it to them always. Sometimes we'll give them a little challenge or even something to play with in order to eat. And that just helps keep their brain working really well. So what you'll see here is a boat. This is a toy boat like we might use in the bathtub. But inside is a crab. Now this crab here is what our octopus likes to eat. And you can see the octopus. Whoa, its body kind of changed. Keep an eye on its body. You might notice some differences in the octopus's body as it's moving around. But it's stretching out its tentacles, you can see, because it's trying to smell and see if it can find anything in its exhibit. Might be interested in. So it can actually smell that crab in the water. It's going to move closer. And then we'll see it using its suction cups to hold onto the boat. And I wonder if it's going to eat the crab or the boat or both or neither. I guess we'll wait and see. All right, so we can see its suction cups holding on. And those suction cups can hold on very, very tight. I did get the chance to play with our octopus, and let me tell you, they are very strong suction cups. All right. Oh my goodness, he's taking down the whole boat. So look at that. So he took down the whole boat and watch. Whoa, look at the color of this octopus's body. So that color pattern kind of tells us, oh, look, the boat. Oh, good. He didn't eat the boat. So he just ate the crab. He got it out of the boat. But that color change of its body told us something about the octopus. So they can actually change color and texture of their body as a way of communicating. So when we talk to each other, that's how we communicate, right? I'm communicating with you right now. If you're texting us in, that's the way you're communicating with us. You are texting. But octopus communicate in a different way, and they can change color as one way of communicating. Now this octopus here, whoa. It changed color, not only color, but texture. Look at the texture of its body. We'll watch it again. So look how smooth the octopus looks right now, especially its head right here, or its organ pouch there. And watch. Now it's spiky. That's so cool. So they have this tangle of muscles around their body that they can pull and release. And when they pull, it causes their skin to kind of spike up like we see here. Now think about, why might an animal do this if not communicating? So an animal might change colors in order to communicate, like we saw with our giant Pacific octopus. But in this video here, it's changing for a different reason. What do you think? There's a big word for when an animal blends in to its surrounding or its habitat, and it's a huge adaptation that a lot of animals in the ocean and on land use. Do you know it? Are you shouting it out to the screen? That's right. Camouflage. So animals will change color in order to camouflage or blend into their surroundings. And octopus are one of the best at camouflage. So this is a two-spot octopus. And this is pretty much the normal color we see for a two-spot. We call them two-spot because they've got a spot here and a spot on the other side. But they can drastically change their color in order to blend into their surroundings. And that's what octopus can do in order to hide from predators. So if they blend in completely, we can't see them. It also allows them to be predators sneak up on their food. Now I know Carrie changed the picture, but did she put one with an octopus up here? I'm just playing. There is an octopus in this image. Did you find it? If you don't know what you're looking for, you might miss it the first time you look at this image. But there is a two-spot octopus right here. So we can see its eyes right here. And then its spot is right here and the other one's on the other side. But look at the difference in color from that kind of grayish octopus we were looking at before to this two-spot octopus right here. And we can see that it changed color to blend into the rocks and the algae growing all around it. And so octopus can stay really safe like this. And then also they can sneak up on their food because if they're blending in and you can't see them, then they can sneak up and grab their food a lot easier. So camouflage is one of octopus's big adaptations because it helps them survive in their habitat. All right, everyone, we are out of time, but I hope you enjoyed learning about invertebrates, animals with no backbone or no bones, and some of the ways that these animals survive in their habitats. I hope you enjoyed. Now, if you have any last minute questions or observations or thoughts you want to share, we'll put that text line up for another couple seconds. You can text us or email us. And if you're looking for more programming, join us at 10. Cynthia will be doing a class on amphibians, and it'll be bilingual. So you'll hear it in English and Spanish, so you can practice your Spanish. All right, everyone. Hope to see you then. Bye.